Welcome back to the slab construction video instructions. So this is my bottom. This has all four sides beveled to begin attaching the box. And I want to just show you that it is not really floppy wet anymore. It's not leather hard either, but it's at this like kind of plastic stage where it can bend but also be stiff enough to hold up. And this is a great stage to start building at, as opposed to a freshly rolled slab, which would kind of just sag, right? So this has been drying up a little bit. I think I left it out for about an hour, and that could be too long where you are, but it seemed to be just long enough here. So now I'm going to start constructing my box. So I need to use some scratching and attaching scoring methods, slipping and scoring. So I have my fork, some water, and I have the bottom, and I have two of my sides ready to go over here. So my sides, I'm making sure that my top is flat. I didn't bevel that, and that's going to be the top of the box. So I'm going to start by scratching, slipping and scoring this bottom piece. And if you notice, I'm working on top of my cloth, or I'd work on top of the board because it is going to get a little wet in the bottom here, and I don't want it to stick to the table. So I'd definitely work on something. Even a piece of paper would be fine. You just don't want to work directly on a table surface. So I'm scoring the two bottom edges I'll be attaching, and I'm also scoring the bottom edge of one side and the bottom edge of this side. Notice I'm keep dipping my fork in the water, and I'm scoring these two edges I'm going to put together here. So I'm only scoring what I'm going to be building with. I don't score everything right away because it'll dry out too much. And the reason I keep dipping my fork in the water is because when I score with the water, I'm actually creating slip. And traditionally people build with just slip, so they'll score it and then they'll paint slip on here, and this is kind of a little bit of a cheating step. It expedites the process. So I'm just going to go back around, make sure these are wet. You don't want them to dry out as you're scoring. All right, so I have all the sides I'm going to be putting together. I'm going to put the two bevels together, push it a little, and I'm going to put these two bevels together on the bottom and the side bevel. I'm going to spin this around so you can see what's happening inside of the box. So I'm pushing and I'm making sure those bevels lined up. If they didn't, there's a little bit I can do later. I'm not going to worry too much about it now. All right, so I'm pushing. You actually want to see some of that water, and you want to hear little air bubbles come out, and then you know you're connected it. The reason I score two sides that I'm putting together is you're creating kind of like a Velcro so that two pieces stick together. So now I have two sides of my box constructed, standing. That's great. I'm not done yet though. So I'm going to take some of my extra clay. So that could have been from one of your slabs or some extra clay that you have. And you want this clay to be a little wetter. So hopefully you listened in the last video and you balled all your scraps together so they didn't dry up like your slabs. And I'm going to make a little snake. Remember some Play-Doh times when you were a kid. You rolled the clay on the table or the Play-Doh on the table. You made little snakes. I'm going to do that. And I want it to be about as long as the side that I'm working on. And I don't want it to be too thick. I want a nice skinny snake. So I'm going to roll it against the table. All right, so now I have my snake. I have my other snake. So I have 1, 2, 3 sides I need snakes for. A little more clay. All right, now I'm ready to roll. So I have my, I would work on this facing me. I'm working facing the camera so you can see what I'm doing. So it's a little awkward because I'm kind of working backwards. I'm taking my fork and I'm doing a little bit of slipping and scoring in the corner. I'm going to work on and just give this snake a little bit. Not a ton, a little bit of scoring. And I'm going to tuck, I'm going to get that little skinny end off. I'm going to tuck this into the corner. So it's touching the top and the floor and the side. And then I'm going to see how my thumb is back here, it's supporting, and my other finger is smoothing this coil down. And it's kind of like a thing I've talked about before, like using when you're putting like peanut butter on a cold piece of bread. You want to use some firm but gentle pressure, so you want to actually smooth it out. And I'm going to just do it to about there and not worry too much. I'm going to put the other pieces on first. So a little bit of scoring. I'm going to put this right in here. Cut off that side. And my hand's back here supporting it as I push. And I'm pushing all that in. Like I said, I'm going to just do it a little rough now. I'm going to clean it up later. So I'm going to finish this side and that side, and I'll be right back. So I spent a little bit of time smoothing out those coils so that they match the interior now, so they're not sticking out. And I just did that with a little bit of firm, gentle pressure, always supporting it on both sides. And now I wanted to make sure I pushed it enough, and I heard some air crackle out. I want to make sure I'm not trapping air, so it was good. I heard a little bit of air come out, a little bit of water. Now I want to make it a little neater. And I definitely recommend doing this part at this stage, because if you put the other two walls up, it's going to be harder to get your hand in here. So I'll do some finishing stuff now while this is open. So I grabbed a sponge and a teeny bit of water to wring it out really good. And then I'm going to use the sponge to smooth that out even more. Notice my left hand is supporting this, or vice versa if you're left-handed. And I'm just using the sponge to make it look like I never put those coils in there at all. Two reasons. One, aesthetically, it's going to be a little nicer inside of this box to have these smoother transitions. And structurally, it's going to hold together better if I actually push those coils in and smooth them out nice. It's going to be better for the glazing too. All right, so now I have two sides of my box constructed and the floor is still here. I'm going to take my remaining two sides. Remember my flat edges at the top. And I'm going to work on one side now at a time. So I'm going to score the bottom. And I'm going to score the side. And I'm going to score the bottom of this piece. And the side of this piece. And I know it's the right side because the top is flat. Notice I keep dipping my fork in the water, and this is creating the slip for my scratching and attaching, or my slipping and scoring. And I'm doing both sides because it creates almost like a Velcro like texture that holds it together. So now I'm putting my two scored bevels together. They fit just like a puzzle piece. And I'm going to, like I said, I'm working backwards. I normally have this facing towards me, but I'm going to face it towards the camera. And I'm going to push along all the edges that I connected. And this is getting rid of any air bubbles, and excess water is going to come out those seams. I don't know if you can see that there. Some bubbles just came out there. I can actually hear them coming out. And then I'm running my fingers up the corner here to stick these two bevels together. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to take my snakes and I'm going to slip and score a little bit here, slip and score a little there, and stick my little coil in there, into that corner. I apologize, I'm working backwards, so it is a little awkward. So you can see from the camera. So I'm sticking that in there. And I use firm but gentle pressure and smooth it out. So it's really in that corner. I should see maybe some air, some bubbles kind of come out, and I know that I'm not trapping air. Nice and smooth. And then I'm going to do my other coil going up this side. I'm going to give it a little bit of slipping and scoring, and this a little bit. I'm going to break off those really small ends and put this piece in. Same thing. So see my hand back here supporting it, and my finger is gently but firmly smoothing this coil in. I'm gonna take my sponge and do the same cleanup I did last time, and I'll be right back. Almost there. So now I smoothed out the coils and all my sides so far. I'm gonna add this fourth wall. So I'm going to now slip and score all three sides of my wall. Notice I'm still dipping it in the water a lot to create the slip. Bear with me. I'm also going kind of lightning fast. You do not have to go this fast. I just don't want to make this video an hour long for you. So if you are building it as you're watching me, you might want to pause occasionally. I'm going to do one last little brush over, make sure there's water on those. And then I'm going to put this final wall on. Notice I'm smoothing out those corners. I'm doing that firm but gentle pressure. And inside of here I can see the little water poking out. Alright, now I've constructed the four sides of my box. I still have four, three seams I need to cover with snakes. So this, and the inside seam. So I'm going to do the same thing I just did previously. That is why I said get these other ones done, because it's a lot of work to reach inside the box, and I only have to reach inside the box for 3 of the seams. So I'm going to put these in and smooth them out with the sponge and clean that up, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've put all my sides together in the bottom, and I put a coil in each seam, and I smooth them all out with the sponge. So now I'm ready for the next step. This next step is called sewing a seam. So this helps keep your slab seams together. It gives it another stress point so that your box won't start to split apart at the seams. So I go right on my corner here and I grab one of my trim tools or a loop tool. And this seems a little counterintuitive, but I'm actually going to cut away and add again. So I take the very edge of my loop tool or the corner of my loop tool and I'm going to scoop away a portion of the corner that I just put together. Not a lot. I scooped away a little amount there. I'm going to take my fork, I'm going to score, and I pre-rolled some little noodles here. I'm going to score that and cut it to length. So now I'm rebuilding this corner up, and notice I'm taking both of my fingers and I'm smoothing out those edges. And I'm making sure that I am getting the clay in there, not causing any air pockets. So I'm pushing the clay. And once I have it pretty rough like that, I can take a very slightly damp sponge. Look, my hand is inside supporting that corner, and I can use the sponge to clean it up. So it's called sewing the seam. And you're thinking, Mr. F, I just put this whole thing together. Why am I cutting parts of it out? It creates another 2 points of contact to help stop this from falling apart at the corners. Because as the clay dries, it's going to want to pull apart. And you're just helping it have one more place where it's definitely going to stick together. So you're going to do that on all 4 of these corners. So I'm going to show you one more and do the other 4 off camera. So I scoop away a little bit of the clay. That one was a little deep. You don't have to go that deep. I make a new coil. I slip and score in here, or scratch and attach a little bit, and cut my coil down to size. Give this a little bit scratch and attach. Stick it right back in there, and then smooth it out. if I'm ever going to push against the wall of the box, I want to keep my hand inside to help support it. Once I have the clay smoothed out, I grab my sponge and I do the same thing. I just clean it up. Make sure you're supporting your piece. All right, so I'm going to do that same thing to all 4 sides, and then my box will be done. Can be constructed at least. All right, so I'm going to get back to you right after I finish that. So now I've constructed the 4 sides of my box. I've sewed all my seams. So all seams have an extra coil in them that I've smoothed out. Now I'm taking my sponge and I'm just cleaning off any little snots that collected when I turned it around, and I'm cleaning up these bottom edges. So now I've just flipped the box upside down. So there's the open bottom, and here is, the open top, and here's the bottom. So now that I cleaned it up, I want to add my foot ring. So I'm going to use one of those frames I cut out. I'm going to clean this up a little more first. And I'm going to put this right on the bottom. This is going to give my pot a little lift, and it'll act as the foot. It'll help you later when you glaze. So I'm just going to visually center it, and then I'm going to mark the area that it's in. I think. Oh, here's my needle tool. So I'm just going to lightly draw where this is. And the reason I'm not putting a whole slab up here, there's a hole cut out in this piece, is because working slab to slab, if I was to put a solid piece on top of here, it's more likely to collect air and maybe blow up in the kiln. So this is better to have that piece cut out there. So I see where I need to put it, and I'm going to slip in or scratch and attach that area. So I traced out the frame on the bottom of my box. And I want to make sure I slip and score this too. And at this point, this stuff's kind of drying up, so I really want to make sure I'm putting some water on here and really scoring it up, because I don't want this piece to fall off. So once both sides are slipped and scored, I'm going to push a little bit, but I want to be delicate. I want to support it from the inside, push a little more there. All right, push here, and then use my finger and smooth. See how I'm smoothing this out here? I want to really connect it. If you're having trouble reaching that, you could grab one of your tools and use it to get in there. I'm not carving, I'm just using this to smooth. You could use a needle tool. And this is just smoothing that seam down so this doesn't go anywhere. At this point, your box should be stiff enough that you can move it around like this. If it's flopping, you need to dry it up a little bit. You don't want it too dry or this isn't going to connect correctly. And then I'm going to smooth in the inside here. Take my sponge now, same thing. Very little bit of water. I'm going to go around and clean up all those edges. And clean up the inside, and then definitely clean up this corner here, because this is where it's going to touch a surface. So use your finger and just compress those edges down. You don't want sharp edges. They chip and the glaze doesn't connect to them. So I just used a sponge and I cleaned up that. So now that is my foot. So now my box has a little bit of lift to it, and it'll be nicer to glaze. So that is the basic construction of my box. I have all 4 of my sides. I have my foot on there. We'll do some fun stuff in the next video to add some handles if you want, or a knob to the lid. But we also need to connect the lid flange. So now you have one piece left. It's your lid. It is not cut anywhere. It's going to fit on the top of your box. But I want to put a flange on it. So this flange is the same shape as the foot. And this is going to stop your lid from sliding off of your box. So the same exact idea. You want to visually center it. Take your needle tool and trace around so you know where to slip and score. same thing. I'm gonna slip and score. And now I can push down on this. I'm gonna do the same thing. Once again, I'm working very quickly. All right, you should take a little more time than I am. I'm gonna smooth down all these seams because I don't want this to fall off. Grab my sponge with a little bit of water and smooth all that down. This also helps get it connected, and it's compressing a little so that all these things will stay put. So now I have my box and my lid with the flange that fits right in there, and this stops the lid from wanting to slide off. And I've completed my box. This is the basic construction of it. I can clean up these edges with a sponge, and next video I'll show you some things you can do to add to make it a little more unique and yours. So hope you enjoyed watching. I'm excited to see what you create. Take your time. I went way fast. Make sure your clay is at the right dryness, but not too dry, so that you can construct it yourself. All right, see you in the next video.